And it's like, okay, well, you're doing a podcast, so it's like, what are you talking about? The benefits of connecting with others is that when things are terrible, are beyond what we ever want to imagine them to be, they can help us lighten the burden. And it doesn't mean anything when you say it because I'm gotten so good at it. Because the alternative is they're gone and they're not coming back. And nobody wants to give up on their partner, their soulmate. Because if I want to believe I would fight till the end of the world for you, I want to believe that you would do the same.
Okay, I'm gonna sit down. Don't. Rocks. You are just gosh darn ridiculous. Shocked you.
Welcome into Folklore and Flourish. You're here with Jane, Mark, and Roxy over at Blue Box 29. Today is February 12th. Week 2, love tested. We are on the waiting.
Happy birthday, Jeremy.
Oh, yeah. Happy birthday, Jeremy. Today is the waiting. The theme for today is endurance. So the endurance. Our 4 stories today come from Greek, Japanese, Chinese, and Lakota folklore. So we're going to take a look at these 4 stories of people waiting. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1, Penelope waits for Odysseus. In Greek tradition, love is not proven only by passion or sacrifice, but by endurance. Some loves are tested not by action, but by time itself. No story holds this truth more quietly than that of Penelope, queen of Ithaca. When the Trojan War was called, Penelope's husband, Odysseus, left their island kingdom to fight. Their son, Telemachus, was still an infant. Penelope was left behind, not knowing whether her husband would return in victory, disgrace, or not at all. Years passed. The war dragged on for a decade. When it finally ended, other kings returned home. Odysseus did not. Rumors reached Ithaca. Some claimed he had died, others that he had been cursed by the gods. No one could say for certain. Penelope waited. Waiting, in her case, was not passive. As queen, she was expected to remarry if her husband was dead. Without a king, Ithaca was vulnerable. Suitors arrived from neighboring lands, filling the palace, eating its stores, demanding that Penelope choose one of them. They assumed grief would weaken her. They were wrong. Penelope refused to choose, insisting that she must first complete a burial shroud for Odysseus's father, Laertes. Only when the weaving was finished, she said, would she remarry. By day, she wove the cloth in the great hall. By night, she unraveled it in secret. This pattern continued for years. The suitors mocked her devotion. They accused her of clinging to false hope. They believed time would break her resolve. But Penelope did not wait because she was naive. She waited because she remembered who she had bound her life to. Greek culture did not idealize waiting as weakness. It understood patience as strength that resists erosion. Penelope's waiting was an act of resistance against pressure, against fear, against the expectation that she should move on for convenience. She held the household together while the suitors grew more aggressive. She raised Telemachus. She maintained rituals, hospitality, and order in a palace that increasingly resembled a siege. Still, she waited. When Odysseus finally returned to Ithaca after 20 years, disguised, weathered, unrecognizable, Penelope did not rush to embrace him. Time had taught her caution. Love that survives years must also survive testing. She questioned him carefully. She listened. She watched. Only when he spoke of their marriage bed, crafted from a living olive tree, rooted into the earth, did she allow herself to believe. That detail was only known to them. The bed, like their bond, was never meant to move. Penelope wept, not because the waiting was over, but because it had been justified. Greek myth does not praise Penelope for blind loyalty. It honors her discernment. She does not surrender herself to hope without evidence, nor does she abandon love because it becomes difficult. Her waiting is portrayed as conscious participation in love's survival. Time does not diminish love in this story. It reveals it. Penelope's endurance teaches that waiting is not empty time. It is time filled with remembering, choosing, and refusing to let circumstance rewrite the heart. She waits not because she is powerless, but because love, when true, does not expire on a schedule. Story 2, The Crane Wife Waits. In Japanese folklore, love is often shaped not by declaration, but by restraint. What is withheld can be as meaningful as what is given. In the tale, Sutru no Onga Ishi, known in English as The Crane Wife, love endures through silence, patience, and the burden of time. The story begins with a poor woodcutter living alone in the mountains of Japan. One winter evening, as snow fell heavily through the cedars, he came upon a crane caught in a hunter's trap. Its white feathers were stained with blood, its wing twisted painfully. Rather than leave it to die or sell it for profit, the woodcutter freed the bird. He wrapped the wing as best he could and watched as the crane slowly lifted itself into the sky and vanished into the snowfall. That night there was a knock at his door. A young woman stood outside, drenched by snow, asking for shelter. She spoke gently and thanked him for his kindness. The woodcutter, though surprised, welcomed her in. She stayed. In time, they married. The woman never spoke of her past. She asked little of him, only that he never look into the room where she worked. They lived simply, but not unhappily. As winter deepened and food grew scarce, the woman told her husband she could help them survive. She would weave cloth of extraordinary beauty, silk so fine it shimmered like moonlight on water. He could sell it at market, but he must promise never to watch her while she worked. He agreed. For days she locked herself away, weaving tirelessly. When she emerged, she was pale and exhausted, but in her hands lay cloth of astonishing craftsmanship. The woodcutter sold it for a high price. Their fortune improved. But the pattern repeated. Each time she wove, she grew weaker. Each time the cloth sold, the woodcutter was praised. Merchants demanded more. Neighbors whispered about the mysterious loom. Time passed. Curiosity crept in. The woodcutter noticed how thin his wife had become, how her hair dulled, how her breath faltered after long hours alone. Still, she asked him for nothing except patience. One night, unable to bear his question any longer, he broke his promise. He peered into the room. Inside, he did not see a woman at a loom. He saw a crane, plucking her own feathers, weaving them into cloth strand by strand. Her body trembled with each movement. The beauty he had profited from was made of her own being. She turned and saw him watching. In that moment, the waiting ended. The crane transformed back into the woman he loved and spoke at last. She told him she was the crane he had once saved. She had stayed with him out of gratitude and love, but the promise he broke could not be repaired. Because love, in this story, survives only where trust survives. She told him she must leave. There was no anger in her voice, only sorrow. The waiting she had endured, working silently, giving slowly, sacrificing without demand, had reached its limit. She could not remain once her truth had exposed without consent. She left as dawn broke, her white form lifting into the sky, never to return. The woodcutter was left with wealth that no longer mattered and time that stretched endlessly forward. Japanese folklore does not frame the crane wife's waiting as passive suffering. Her endurance is a choice, sustained as long as the bond between them remains unbroken. The moment trust fails, time itself turns against love. Waiting here is sacred only when it is honored. The story teaches that patience must be mutual. Love may endure hardship, silence, and sacrifice, but it cannot survive betrayal masked as curiosity. The crane wife waits not because she is weak, but because she believes in restraint. When restraint is violated, waiting loses its meaning. In Japanese tradition, love survives time only when boundaries are respected. Story 3. Meng Duang Niu waits and the wall weeps. In Chinese tradition, endurance is not passive. It is an act of fidelity carried through time, grief, and refusal. The story of Meng Duang Niu is one of the oldest and most enduring legends of waiting in Chinese folklore. A story where love does not triumph through reunion, but through persistence that reshapes the world itself. Meng Duang Niu lived during the reign of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of a unified China, whose rule was marked by immense ambition and devastating human cost. Among his greatest projects was the Great Wall, constructed through forced labor that claimed countless lives. Meng Zhangniu was newly married when imperial soldiers came to her village. Her husband, Fan Qinglong, was conscripted and taken away before their life together had begun. He left with no promise of return, only the echo of his name carried into the distance. Seasons passed. Winter hardened into spring, spring into summer. Letters never came, news never followed. Still, Meng Zhangniu waited. In traditional Chinese storytelling, waiting is often portrayed as alignment with time rather than resistance to it. Meng Zhangniu did not rage against fate. She prepared clothing for her husband, thick garments sewn carefully for the cold northern winds. Each stitch was an act of faith that he still lived. When winter came again and no word arrived, she could no longer remain still. She set out alone to find him. Her journey took her across provinces and mountains, through villages filled with women who shared her silence. When she reached the Great Wall, she searched among endless lines of laborers, asking his name again and again. No one knew him. Finally, a fellow worker told her the truth. Fan Qilong had died from exhaustion. His body had been buried within the wall itself. He was done with countless others whose lives were treated as mortar. The waiting ended not with reunion, but with revelation. Meng Zhangniu collapsed at the base of the wall and wept. Her grief was not quiet. It was not contained. It rose like a storm carried through generations of silence. She cried for her husband, for the dead, for the living forced into submission. The wall responded. Stone cracked. Sections of the great wall collapsed under the weight of her sorrow, exposing the bones of those buried inside. Fan Qinglong's remains were revealed at last, allowing him the burial denied in life. In some versions of the legends, the emperor hears of Meng Zhangniu's devotion and demands she marry him. She agrees only if he grants her husband proper rights and performs rituals for the dead. When these are completed, she throws herself into the sea, choosing fidelity beyond life rather than union without love. In Chinese tradition, Meng Zhangniu's waiting is not framed as weakness. It is portrayed as moral resistance. She does not overthrow the emperor by force. She exposes the cost of tyranny through steadfast love. Her endurance outlasts stone. The wall, built to assert power and performance, fractures under the weight of grief that refuses to disappear. Waiting in this story is not stillness, it is accumulation. Time gathers sorrow until the world must respond. Meng Zhangniu does not wait in hope of return. She waits because love demands presence even in absence. Her faithfulness becomes an indictment. of a system that treats human lives as expendable. Chinese folklore preserves this story not as romance alone, but as warning. Love that waits with integrity cannot be erased. When ignored too long, it reshapes the landscape. Waiting here is participation in memory. Memory does not remain silent forever. Story 4. Waiting Here Stories. Among the Lakota, waiting is not absence. It is presence held with intention. The phrase often translates as waiting here does not mean idleness or delay. It describes a state of attentiveness, remaining in relationship with time, place, and spirit, even when nothing outward appears to change. In Lakota storytelling, love does not rush ahead of readiness. It stays. Stories speak of people who remain beside the fire long after others have gone, of women and men who hold space for those who have not returned, of communities that wait for visions, seasons, or loved ones without demanding certainty. Waiting is participation. In one widely shared teaching, an elder explains that when someone leaves, whether for war, a hunt, or the spirit world, the people do not move on as though separation severs connection. They wait in a way that honors the bond still living. To wait, in this sense, is to stay oriented toward return, even if return never comes. A Lakota story tells of a woman whose partner left with a war party. She did not follow. She did not pursue signs or force knowledge of his fate. Instead, she kept the fire burning each evening, placing food beside it as though he might arrive at any moment. Others questioned her. "Why do you keep preparing?" they asked. "He may never return." She answered simply, "Because love does not leave before it must." Seasons passed, snow came and melted. Grass returned. Still she waited. The story does not end with reunion. That is not its purpose. What matters is that her waiting was not rooted in denial. She understood loss as a possibility, but she also understood that love survives time when it is not hurried into conclusion. Lakota teachings emphasize Tawachin Tanka, often translated as deep consideration or mindfulness. Waiting becomes an expression of this awareness, remaining connected without grasping. In ceremonies, waiting appears again and again. Before a vision quest, one waits. Before speaking sacred words, one waits. Before acting, one waits. Waiting is how the spirit listens. Unlike stories where waiting is portrayed as suffering endured for reward, Lakota narratives do not promise outcome. Waiting is not a transaction. It is a relationship with uncertainty itself. In another teaching story, a young man asks an elder how long he must wait for guidance. The elder gestures to the land and says, "As long as the earth waits for spring." Spring comes every year, but never on command. So it is with love. Lakota stories resist framing waiting as weakness. Instead, impatience is seen as dangerous, a sign of disconnection from rhythm and responsibility. To rush is to risk acting without consent from time. Waiting is consent. In relationships, this appears as restraint. One does not force confession. One does not demand resolution before the heart is ready. Silence is allowed to breathe. Love, in this tradition, survives because it is not pressed into premature answers. The phrase, "waiting here," also holds communal meaning. When someone is lost or grieving, the community waits with them. They do not push grief forward or urge closure. They remain present until movement arises naturally. Waiting becomes shared labor. The Lakota worldview understands that endurance does not mean clinging. The woman waiting by the fire does not chain herself to expectation. She stays open, prepared for return, prepared for absence. Both are honored. In this way, waiting becomes a form of courage. It requires trust, not in outcome, but in relationship itself. Love does not diminish because time stretches. It deepens because it is not abandoned. This story teaches that waiting is not the opposite of action. It is action aligned with time rather than against it. To wait well is to stay awake. Hey everybody, welcome back in. Hope you enjoyed those 4 stories of the waiting. So today's theme was endurance, and our lesson is that love survives time. So with our 4 stories today, our daily thread is across these traditions, waiting is not emptiness but devotion held in time. Penelope preserves choice while resisting pressure to surrender it. The crane wife endures in silence until trust is broken. Mungdyunmu's grief gathers until stone itself must answer. Lakota teachings show waiting as presence rather than longing. Each story reminds us that love survives not by haste. It endures by staying awake to time without abandoning the bond. Our very first story is Penelope and Odysseus. So you get to see Odysseus. I've told you about this a couple times.
I think we've heard this story on here before.
We've heard him how he came home, but not so much about the pressure that Penelope was under and like how she continued to get through it, being the queen without her king there.
Right.
I really liked that.
The robe thing made me chuckle, like how she wove during the day
and then she took it out at night, all her progress. So it looked like it was just this endless thing. I really enjoyed how when we listened to it that second time, it made me think she knows who she married and he's gonna fight his way back home.
Right.
And then if she knew that he was gonna give it his all to get here, she was gonna give it her all to wait for him.
Mm-hmm.
She was gonna stretch every single thing that she could.
I wonder how long he was home before he really revealed himself, because I know it says that he came, in secret, and he made sure that
it was a pretty quick transition. It wasn't like a long time. It was a few days, like it was the final few days, and it was just so he could get up back into like his castle, his home, to his stuff, to his men.
Right.
So he could find out who to trust. So that's what's interesting too, is that he came home and he's able to see without any haze at all, without any blinders on, who people are and who their allegiance is to.
Right.
And
this has been 20
now
years.
he is here. Yeah, because the Trojan War was 10 years and then his journey back was 10.
Oh.
So she ultimately had heard that they had won, had heard that he was probably survived. I'm sure there was he was sending stuff to her. And so it was something happened on the journey home, but I haven't heard clear word from someone who saw it. They just don't know where he is. That doesn't mean he's gone.
Right.
They just don't know where he is. So that was interesting as well. But she knew that he was going to exhaust every effort to make it home.
Right.
So she was going to exhaust every effort to wait it out. So it wasn't so much as my love belongs to the person I vowed it to. No, I know the kind of person I vowed it to as well. And their willpower, their restraint, and all of that.
It's better.
With this story, Penelope's waiting is not submission to absence, but an active preservation of choice. The story honors patience as a form of agency, not self-erasure. So this wasn't blind waiting, blind hope. It was that understanding, that deep down no, exhausting every effort. And if there's nothing, left for me to do and I have to move on, then it was time.
Right.
He's gone. I must accept that. But she didn't have to. And I love how she wasn't so fast to jump on top of him. She made sure it was him.
By something that only those two would know, which was cool.
Right. And again, so how we talked about the other day, do we keep anything from our partner? Should they know the things about us that we don't share with others?
Right.
There's that benefit.
Right. Like nobody else is going to know this, but you and I.
Right. The story 2, the crane wife waits. So the crane wife.
Man, sounded oddly familiar, like another story we just heard.
Yeah, it was that other one where she transformed herself. So she was watching him. The younger one survived that snowstorm. She watched him, said, don't tell anyone about this. This one said, don't come in here. But this one, I think, was...
Yeah, but they still married.
Yeah.
Both stories, they were married. Yeah. Both was, don't do something. Like, it's the same story.
Right, it is. And it's just preserving that, crossing the boundary of trust. I did like the way this one did it more than the other one.
Right.
I think this one was a little more direct with, you know who you're marrying. Okay, so that's what I mean. He knew he was marrying someone he didn't know the past of. She wasn't going to talk about it. That was an accepted arrangement.
Came out of nowhere.
Therefore, it didn't matter who she was, her intentions, anything like that. Yep. He acknowledged that that wasn't going to be something that they talked about. I liked how the crane wife, that one was a little bit different. She was just saying, you know, I'm working hard at making sacrifices. I'm just asking that you don't watch the process. I don't want you to see what's happening. Just trust me. I'm sure there was there's nothing illegal or anything like that, right? Just trust me. And that, I think, was a very beautiful way to capture this one, right? Because she came back as someone who was rescued and spared and given grace. Isn't that what that's those are traits I want in a partner. That would make me come search you out or come find you or no, I could be safe with you.
Right.
So this one I really liked. Unfortunately, he did look. I like at the end how it says those boundaries need to be respected and not mistaking that betrayal with curiosity, because that's kind of what it was, a curiosity.
Right.
And no, that was still betrayal, though it's not.
Because at the end of the day, you agreed to not look. So you gave away your right to be upset that whatever the outcome is, whatever you're feeling about not being able to see what that is, that's all on you. And you got to take responsibility for that.
And it never says he asked about it or anything either.
Right.
Like he asked her if she would reconsider. Or, hey, would you just share? I just want to make sure like you're okay. You know, because if it was curiosity, I want to make sure you're okay. Why didn't you ask? I didn't say you couldn't talk about it. I just said you couldn't look. So there's that. But this crane wife endurance is conditional, not endless. The story warns that love sustained through waiting depends on mutual respect, not entitlement. That goes to a few days ago when we talked about how we feel obligated because we spend a couple years with someone, so we've invested this much time. But in the grand scheme of things, if I'm looking to spend 30, 50 years with someone, if after 3 years it's already not going to work out, it's not going to work out.
Right.
And this one is showing that there are conditions. It will only survive on mutual respect, on understanding those boundaries. This wasn't a beat around the bush or no, there was a clear line and he acknowledged it and accepted it. So it was that, okay. So she let her guard down because mutual, trust. Yep. She trusted he would never come in. When he did, she was in that form and that's why she had to leave. And there was no arguing or anything either because I think he understood that's why he shouldn't have looked. And it was too late. She was going to leave. And to also know that that is the cultural belief system is the trust, and knowing that
once it's gone,
cross that line. But moving on to story 3, we go straight right over to China for this one. This one is how waiting transforms grief into moral force. The story teaches that endurance rooted in love can fracture even the most imposing structures. I liked how I've never even thought about the widows of the people who built the Great Wall.
Yeah.
I've only ever thought about the people that died making it. I've never thought about how there was never any word sent home. There was so many questions left. You really did, I guess, based on the story, you really did not know what happened to them.
Yeah.
You just hope that they, I guess, died a painless death. And she went and looked for him, found him. I like how the wall cracked because of her grief. Like, it was such an imposing force, that search, that waiting, and that was the little bit that could be given back. And then I like how she promised to marry the emperor, who was the reason this wall was being built, the reason that there were millions of widows, hundreds, thousands, I don't know how many. But she agreed to, after the burial and the rites and these rituals were done to honor the dead, to honor those, and that happened. And then she was like, yeah, no.
Yeah,
but
by the
you,
way.
peace out. Yeah.
Yep.
I don't need it, but this was like a humbling experience for the emperor. Yeah. That's how passionate my love is. I went and found him, grieved for him until the earth spat him back up. And then I gave myself back to the earth is like that. It was like a beautiful circle of interchange between her and the earth,
Yeah.
I think, because she re-honored all of those people and forced the emperor to honor them, humbling my love, like to demand an emperor. Love is the reason behind a lot of things about bringing down so many institutional things throughout history, right? Monarchies, dictatorships, the tyranny, how it does come down to love. And that's what this is kind of showing, that it is significant. And it was just one normal person that made a significant difference, that humbled the emperor. So that's pretty interesting. We see quite a few of these, like Mulan's a major one where that has a similar feeling, humbling. Story 3, Lakota waiting is not about delay, but attentiveness. The story emphasizes endurance as a shared, conscious act rather than passive longing. I thought that was another beautiful thing of community. I love hearing the stories where the cultures are so one with the community, because it brings hope back into my eyes of, oh yeah, what's the purpose of community? That's why I need to be a good community member. And how I told you, these are the things I want to do, because that's how I think I would be a good community member. I don't want to lead the pack. I kind of just want to be the one that helps heal it, while like you lead with your voice, if that makes sense.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, you're doing a podcast, so it's like, what are you talking about? But it's a whole different thing being behind like a screen versus standing in front of people.
Yeah.
And I just want that like kind of minimalistic stuff for me. And then we go in, and I think like traveling is minimalistic,
Yeah.
Like we don't need to stay at the resorts and stuff, but to go live. And I don't know, this one just kind of showed that the benefits of connecting with others is that when things are terrible, are beyond what we ever want to imagine them to be, they can help us lighten the burden. And there's no obligation or sense of give or take or you owe me this or that. It's just everyone is grieving for you and with you. And it didn't seem like pity at all. That's not how it's portrayed. That's just pure empathy. Nobody's invading your privacy or wants to know the details. I used to be like that. Like I want to know the details of how someone was gone or what happened. And now it has nothing to do with that. This one is just that understanding. And they are probably talking and sharing, but there's so much more that's shared through actions and watching someone who's grieving. You can learn a lot from that versus actually asking them about it.
Right.
And it's not micromanaging. It's not to gossip. It's to make sure you're okay while you're not even seeing what you need. Those people, when bringing food over, that being a custom, because we're not thinking about eating when we're grieving, when we're mourning. Our mind is so much stronger than our stomach is, for sure. And so our brain just turns off, and that's all it's focused on, to where we cause damage to our bodies, and people try to help. And I like that there are communities that still heavily emphasize that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's more common. And if you don't have it, try to find it, because it is common. If it's not with the people that you're with, if that's not how we're describing them, and that's something you long for, and that's something you want, then you probably need some new people, unfortunately. Sorry to say it, but I'm not sorry. You'll be happier.
But the exciting thing about it now is that, apart from like looking at these cultures and learning about them and loving them and understanding folklore, now there is more diversity in our own personal tribes.
Yeah.
Right? Some are very similar to others, where others are different, but just like I'm very different from them. And so we get to share in that kind of experience. But I definitely see where certain ideals and traditions are taught better, I think, or taught as a heavier emphasis, not even just better. And the Lakota, as we see in all of our stories, I really think that their biggest emphasis is empathy. Like that's something that's rooted in their teachings. Whereas there's other ones where it's courage a lot of the time, right? The Norse one is just facing your destiny, having the courage to face it. And so standing firm when things are terrible makes me excited and makes me happy to think that there is so many purposes to community. And whatever purpose we serve within our community, it doesn't matter because we're part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's not just we feel empathy because you do everything for me, or because I like you more. No, we all feel it because you're a vital part of this community. And I would like that's what I think you're trying to make with your, our business, but you're really trying to make is that community, like that tribe that you're a part of and stuff. And so, yeah, I like it. And this story makes me excited for that. And it makes it easier for me to follow your vision is kind of what I'm trying to get to.
That's awesome. I appreciate that. Thank
Mhm.
you. But I enjoy the way you look at stories in a totally different way than I do. So
Yeah.
that's what makes this podcast kind of fun too, because the way I was listening to it was, man, that's so sad that she's just that dedicated to making him a meal every day. Every day she made food, and the people were like, but they were there for her, right?
Mhm.
And they just allowed her to be in that and watched over her. But it's like, how long do you allow someone to?
Well, there were those controversial voices too. So I think that you get that in your community with how diverse your group of personalities are. You get those people that try to push you out of it, those people that kind of mock you out of it, and those people that just hold you and guide you. But at the end of the day, if a vital piece, like a pillar holding this building up, if one of the pillars crumble, it's going to get weak.
Yeah.
Right? Other people around it are going to have to stand up. And so ultimately, as much as we might mock or try to push people out of it, there is that little bit of we still have to be there.
Yeah.
If they crumble under that pressure.
Right. Because it is still them at the end of the day.
Mhm.
And if you truly do care, you will be there for when that fall happens,
Right.
in whatever way they need you. That's a big thing too, because some people grieve one way and other people grieve another way. And you do have to respect that,
Mhm.
just because you don't agree with how they're grieving doesn't mean it's not right. It's their way. Could you suggest another way? Yeah, I don't see why not.
What is wrong with and that's why I liked this story too and kind of what you're going with.
Mhm.
What was wrong with it? She wasn't hurting anyone.
No.
She was it was just that hope. Because if I stop making it, then that means I've given up.
Yeah.
The day I stopped was the day I stopped believing he would come home. And then I have to face the fact that he's gone.
And I like that the story said it's not about whether or not he did or did not come home,
Mm-hmm.
because they even say that they're not going to tell you whether he did or didn't, because it could be either one. So it could have been a week later after the story ends, and then all of a sudden there he is. But there was no need to say it for the reason why we're sitting here talking.
Right. And the last line kind of just hit me with a different perspective too. To wait well is to stay awake, to wait well, not drowning in your sorrow or in the bottle or in the drugs and that's for all of us, whatever our vice is. We're waiting well. We're standing in that pain and we're facing it and we're facing the reality that, yeah, I may have to empty that bowl that I made for him back into the pot. And that sucks. But if he gets home, he has a meal waiting for him. If he gets home, he has a meal that was intended for him there. And yet, so it's like, wow, look at you making that dish. You don't think that she felt that pain when she had to put that food back?
Right.
That is way worse than having it sit there.
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, that would be the worst feeling. It wouldn't even be sitting there eating by yourself. It would be moving it back in. But then again, well, he wouldn't have wanted that anyways today. So
Yeah.
this is what I'm going to make tomorrow. Maybe this is the meal. Because you got to think that too. Maybe it's this. That superstition kind of starts to kick in. Regardless, just honoring people and helping them. And there are always people, and usually people we have no idea are watching us. Like how I told you that person the other day said, well, I've been your neighbor, so you must know me. He knows a lot more about me than I know about him. And so it's like people are watching and care and root, and they see when help is needed. They see when a word is needed, and that's beautiful. But at the end of the day, you have to get yourself through it. It's you. It's me at the end of the day, right? That has to make that meal, that has to continue to wait. It has to swallow down all of those thoughts that, yeah, you're saying it, but I'm probably thinking it. That thought's probably crossed my mind. I've probably had to silence that thought a million times.
Yeah, so I don't need you.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean anything when you say it because I'm gotten so good at it. Because the alternative is they're gone and they're not coming back. And nobody wants to give up on their partner, their soulmate. Because if I want to believe I would fight till the end of the world for you, I want to believe that you would do the same.
Right.
And what's the harm? So that one was a sad and beautiful story. I really liked that one.
Yeah. Definitely a lip quiver for sure.
Once I realized that how I felt, I pictured it was literally chicken Alfredo sitting there, and how many times I would perfect that dish. It was just too salty today.
I'd come home on a burnt day.
Yeah. And I'd be like, this is what you get. You knew it was going to be the day. You knew it was going to be today.
It's the day where you're like, this motherfucker ain't
But it
home.
wouldn't even
I ain't gonna
be
do
the,
this. He ain't gonna be here. And then you're like,
yeah, because it's like
hey.
I could see myself joking through it, but it would be putting it away that way.
Gosh, that would be just.
Yeah, but I'd rather do that than the alternative, Anyways, the lesson today was that love survives time through the theme of endurance. So we're sitting here waiting. The question of the day, our reflection question is, what am I willing to wait for? So what am I willing to wait for? There was a lot within these stories. It's not just a physical being you're waiting for. You're waiting for love. You're waiting for courage. You're waiting for their leadership, right? Penelope waiting for the king to return. Where the Chinese woman, she was just waiting for that respect to be given at the end there. Whatever it may be, right? What am I willing to wait for? That's our thought today. And then you're going to love this. It's a little bit of a meditation, sit in silence kind of thing. You're going to sit quietly for 5 minutes without distraction, allowing impatience to surface and pass. So sit quietly for 5 minutes. You're going to meditate for 5 minutes. And you're going to allow the impatience to arise and then pass.
I like that. Because if you've not meditated much, or you're just beginning, or even sometimes myself.
Well, I think it's perfect for how you're helping me.
Yeah, like you can be sitting there meditating and it seemed like it's been forever. And you're like, I just can't get in it. It's just not working. And you get impatient. And it's like at those moments, that's when it still happens to me.
Mm-hmm.
So in those moments, I'm like, no, this is why it's not working. So stop, take a deep breath, and I'll change the breathing that I'm doing. So if I'm doing a certain breath thing or not at all, I'll change it and I'll really concentrate on my breath. And then that gets that impatience and it helps me push through it. So
it's exactly how those 4 stories were, to wait well, to face it, because if I live in total just this isolation, this shell, I can't take those critiques out in public.
Right.
What do you mean he's not coming home? You think that with every single stitch that I had put into that I didn't think that? It's a waste of time for who? That would have meant that my vow was a waste, that my faith in who I did that with and who I did it under was a waste, and it's not. It was all about, love wasn't needing to go yet. It had to fulfill its purpose. And so to fulfill any purpose, we have to stand in the critiques. We have to face them and allow them to pass. And I like how it just says, just allowing them to, which means I'm not going to analyze it. Just going to, like you said, breathe through it. I'm not going to try to talk my way out of it. I'm just going to breathe through it. And that's something I've really struggled with meditation with before, is that I always try to reason my way into focusing when it's like, it's tricking you to reason.
Yeah.
And it's like my inner being just laughing, and Kung Fu Panda 4, when he's like 5 toes are there.
Yeah.
And they're all, that's how it feels. And it's like,
And
but
that's the thing, is you just got to recognize that. As soon as you do, you recognize, and it doesn't matter what the thought is. It could be exactly as mundane as that, or it can be an actual thought of something, and you just recognize it, and you be like, "Oh, hey," and don't get mad about it. Be like, "Oh, hey, cool. I want to think about you later, but not right now. So if you could just and scooch that thought away, and you can do it. Scooch your thoughts, or do whatever silly thing you need, or calming thing you need to do. But just in a little bit, we'll talk, we'll think.
that.
But it doesn't have to be a like, oh, not again, because that'll really throw you out. But if you're just like, oh, I see you, we'll talk about this later, and then move on with it, because then you're aware of what that thought was. You're conscious of it. And then you're giving yourself permission to, 1, move on, and 2, come back to it later.
Yes.
So it doesn't bother you.
And that's where I'm kind of working at now. And that's how I told you, like, how I've been looking into Gaia, not just looking into it, but I'm actually actively saving things that I'm going to look at, because I want to look at them in a certain order. I've done the yoga that I'm wanting to start when we get the TV back. I've done this program before. It's just 28-day yoga. But the way that she is, I really think if I do some specific meditation work on top of that, because there are days where, like, every 5 or 4 days or once a week or whatever, she has a meditation.
That's cool.
So you're sitting there in it, and it's all about the breath work. So I already can hear her voice. I've done it so many times. I really like it, that I want to find that one on Gaia to match it. So that's what I've kind of been looking at, is expanding it. Kind of how you said, like the push-up thing, but how do I meditate for 3 minutes and then go to 6 minutes?
Once you start getting good, it's going to be when you open your eyes to see how long it's been, and don't look right away. Try and guess how long you've been meditating. And I'll guarantee you there's going to come a time where you're like, no way. And you'll be like, wow, 30 minutes have went by, 45 minutes.
I think that's
hours went by, and you were conscious the whole time. That's the part where some people I get confused sometimes. I'll be like, oh, I meditated really good. No, I passed out because I was like laying down or just super comfy. So if you're really doing it, get in that seated position so you're not going to fall asleep.
I think I've done meditation, but not that form. I think I've done it through painting, like how I just completely check out, how I tell you. And then it'll be like 3 hours later, and all of a sudden it's 1 a.m. And like I'm covered in paint and I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
It's because I've completely checked out, and I've just, because I'm
Your
not
creative
mentally
side's
there.
just,
My body is just like doing it. We're going to sit quietly for 5 minutes, and then we're going to remember that love survives when waiting is treated as participation rather than delay. I'm choosing to wait, not I'm avoiding moving on. I'm choosing to wait. And so what are we willing to wait for? And then sit for 5 minutes and allow that impatience to surface. Impatience towards anything, it could be 5 different things you're impatient about right now. And then just allow them to pass. But that's all we have for today. The waiting is February 12th, 212. Lots of even numbers. Lots and lots and lots. So we will see you tomorrow as we continue week 2. Love Tested. I can't believe that we are already about halfway done with the second month already. This year is going to fly by. Like we said, it was messy and sloppy kind of in January. We're getting into it now, though.
yeah.
But that's all that we have for you guys today, and we'll see you later.
Love you. Have a great night.